telling your story gives other people permission
Right.
to tell their stories and to not be scared to do so.
So then it becomes so telling our story, right? One benefit is us, and we're kind of like piecing together, like even how God works in our life and our experiences and even hardships, and tying those into where we are today. But what you're saying is it helps also other people to receive that story.
Yeah.
And then it's another like level of relating.
Right. Hi, I'm Caroline Howard, a biblical counselor and certified life breakthrough coach.
And I'm Chris Oneth, marriage and family therapist and executive director of Downey Park Counseling Associates.
Welcome to our next question, where we attempt to answer the questions of life through conversations in psychology and Christianity.
Remember, this is a place of discovery and definitely not the final answer. We're
Clapping.
just super excited,
Just
but
excited.
nothing was being recorded.
Because we're kicking off something cool today.
We are.
We're kicking off a summer series because it's June.
Yes.
Summertime. I was just listening to that in my car. That's all I'll do because I don't want to get in trouble.
Time to kick back and unwind.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, so we were restraining you from clapping because we don't want to set off your sports injury.
I love that we're calling it a sports
So
injury.
Caroline does not have her cast on anymore, nor does she have a brace.
No.
She's ready to tackle the pommel horse.
My chains are gone. I've been set free.
There you go. And so what can you do?
I can move it.
Okay.
That's it for now. I have two weeks of moving and stretching and mobility, and then I get to start using weights. And
Is there a training montage like the
muscle.
Rocky films where you're like,
Should
make one happen.
It's really nice though that it's my right hand because I'll literally drive in the car and I'm doing all of my physical therapy while I'm driving. It's great multitasking.
It's supposed to be 10 and 2.
I know, but I can't actually hold the steering wheel that
10
great
and
with
2.
it yet.
You could ride a motorcycle because they say you're supposed to grip the handlebar like like an ice cream cone, not like a bicycle, but an ice cream cone where you grab.
I don't know. I grip my ice cream cones very aggressively.
Yeah, I do too. Wait,
There's
like
firm
daintily
grasp.
grab your ice cream cone. Like I'm
Firmly
trying to
grasp
think
it.
of.
Yes, exactly.
You're right. I'll have to
So
pretend.
I don't know if this correlates, but I noticed that you were also you've done your hair. You're not wearing a hat.
I know.
All these things are happening now that you have no more hand brace. So
I ironed my shirt today.
Yeah. Hey, whether it needs it or not.
I'm human again.
Okay, then.
It does feel like that.
Able to.
I am still using my left hand a lot though, because I want to become ambidextrous.
Ambidextrous, not
Ambidextrous.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I want to be that.
Just like it's especially, not especially.
Well,
Or espresso.
I don't want to be any of that.
What?
I'm gonna espresso myself.
Well, then we'll just invent pronunciations.
I mean, they did that in the first place. Somebody had to do
Right?
it.
We have so many made up words in our house. My kids would like make up, say words wrong, and it was so cute that I just left it.
Well, even Mark Twain quotes as the beautiful childhood mispronunciation of words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For
But
breakable.
now that we're adults, maybe
My dad's
It's less cute than it used to
my
be.
dad's motto in
you got
life.
the word hair, don't you?
I got what?
The word hair.
The what?
That's how I say word.
Word.
Word. That's cool, right? Word hair.
I don't even know what
No,
you're
you
saying.
have orange hair. Orange hair.
I
That's
have
what you
red
got.
hair.
No,
It's not orange.
It's orange.
A carrot is orange. Do I look like a carrot?
It's orange.
It's not orange. It's
But if
red.
I can say it the way I want it,
You're just jealous I have hair.
no, if I can say right,
Right, you could say orange.
okay then.
I
I'm
just
glad
won't.
we settled that.
I just won't acknowledge it.
Orange
Like
head.
when people call me Carolyn.
Ooh, but they're just that's a mispronunciation.
It is. And I'll answer it. I've gotten used
So then,
to it.
so is espresso or library. They are mispronunciations. Library.
We call Yosemite Yosemite. Let's go
We
to
better be
Yosemite.
Actually,
careful. We're gonna
that
become
may
like
have been
the-
the original pronunciation.
I know.
We're going to become the grammar podcast pretty soon.
We are. Oh gosh, we're slipping dangerously into it.
Exactly.
Thank you,
Okay,
Dad.
so we're doing a summer series.
Allegedly.
We are doing a summer series. And it's going to be, the title of our summer series is What's Your Story?
What is your story? Okay,
What is your
cool.
story? So we want to
Let me guess. It's about people's stories.
You're brilliant.
I noodled it through.
This is why you're here with
I
Critical
me.
got the
thinking
college.
skills.
I got the college.
Since I can't talk, I needed someone who's smart and intelligent. So
I can't talk good.
I chose Chris. And then I realized, oh man, I really need someone else. And so
Ow.
then we brought in Caleb.
That was almost a compliment.
So yeah, we're going to bring on some different guests.
Okay.
We're going to start off with the three of us telling our story so that
All in one show?
no, we're going to spread it out. That's
Okay.
the whole point. Like summertime, we get a little more relaxed, but we also get like busier. Our kids are home. We go on
Oh.
vacations. Maybe we're not like,
Help
we're
me
kind of
understand that
out of
one, like
our-
how it gets busier when kids aren't going to school.
because they're home.
And?
Well, if they're young, then they have to be supervised. You can't just let them run amok.
That is true.
Yeah. If you're a working parent and now all of a sudden your kids are home, you got to figure out what to
you know
do
what?
with them
That's a
all
good
the time.
point. That's a good point.
Yeah. And so you don't get, especially, well, I'll just speak from a mom's perspective. I don't get as well. My son's 13 now, so it's going to be a great summer.
Heard he hit his head again.
But you don't get as much of that alone time. So my podcast
Yeah.
time is kind of usually one of the first things to go because
Oh,
I'm not in the
no.
car alone.
We don't want that.
So we're going to keep
Well,
these a little
apparently
bit shorter.
your son's not going to be much of a factor because he hit his head again.
I know.
So he should be passed
Oh
out.
my gosh, this kid. It's ridiculous.
So my friend Christian Howard tells me this morning, he's like
kid.
asking Nolan, how'd you hit your head? He goes, I'm not ready to tell you that right now. Or Nolan was
no,
like,
he doesn't know. He doesn't.
oh, I didn't
Yeah.
realize that.
No, he's like, what did you do? He's like, well, he knows he fell off his bike.
oh
And
my
he's like,
gosh.
well, how did it happen?
Concussed.
How did it happen? He goes, he's like, I don't know. I don't know if I
That's interesting.
hit something or if I slipped something. I was riding and then I was on the ground.
Oh, that's the rest of the story.
That's the story. Yeah. He never said, I'm not ready to tell.
Oh, okay. Maybe that was Chris's take on it. And
Yeah. No, he would.
This is why two sides of the story are
Because we talked about it like all the way to the ER and back last night. And I'm like, he's like, no. And the doctor asked him the same thing. And he's just like,
I don't know.
I was on the bike. I was on the ground.
Oh, that's too bad. And then he can't like identify a
So,
swinging
I
sandbag
know.
that came at him or
I know.
something.
Like the last time it was mud.
That's unnerving.
Slid in
He
the-
hit mud.
Last time he slid in
Easy to
mud, but
do.
then landed in hard dirt. This
yeah,
time
you
it was
got to
on
keep the juice on the
road.
back wheel.
This time it was road. So he's got like the road rash on his shoulder,
Oh,
on his hip,
no.
on his head. Like on his head is
Oh,
like
no.
a gnarly. Yeah. I know.
No
kid.
bueno.
This kid.
I'm sorry to hear that.
He
Well,
needs-
that's his story. Maybe we should come on and he could tell what he doesn't remember.
He needs bubble wrap. His sister and I decided we're
There
going
you
to
go.
bubble wrap.
I was just thinking that bubble wrap could really help.
So they have
And a
like
helmet.
spendy things you can buy that, believe it or not, airbags for
Uh-huh.
like it goes
that.
around the head and stuff
What?
like that. Oh,
And
sure.
like the back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait. So like, but it doesn't.
She's like,
it's
sign
not like
me up.
always there, or is it like it knows you're
No,
going
it's
down
not always
and it
there. You
deploys?
start to fall over. Usually it's connected. There's like a cord that's connected to the bike. And once
Oh.
that's broken,
I'm looking this
they
up.
have it for motorcycles. They have it for I've seen it even for bicycles. Variations of the thing.
Nice.
So yeah, it inflates and it protects your melon.
Okay, I'm gonna look that up
You
because
have
he was
no one to
like,
blame.
"Sure, mom, you can buy me a helmet, but as soon as I ride away, I'm taking it off."
Yeah, if a kid like
And
that
none of
hasn't
his other
learned
friends are-
that-
no one wears them.
yeah, kids, man.
Do you wear one?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Your husband doesn't.
No, but how many times has he fallen off a bike?
Doesn't
and how many-
matter. All it takes is once.
It really does.
Apparently,
You're
I have
right.
a very thick skull, so I'm impervious. Well, actually, it doesn't matter how thick my skull is. The brain in there is bouncing around.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should go get an fMRI and see what kind of damage
I'm
has
good.
been done in your brain.
I'm good, as you can clearly tell.
Okay, so we're gonna keep these shorter, even though
Allegedly.
we're trying not to go off on as many of our tangents.
Yeah.
But today, to kick off the summer series, we're going to talk about why it's important to tell our stories.
Fair enough.
Because, there's a reason. We don't want to just start telling them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what's your take? Why is it important?
There's so many. There really are so many reasons. But I would say
Sounds like you're avoiding telling me.
No. I think the main reason for telling your story, well, some of them, are connection. Like when you
Fair
tell your
enough.
story, you connect to the person you're telling your story to.
Okay.
It's also like
How so?
because you can become relatable. Well, first, let's go first. You're vulnerable when you tell your story.
Well, it depends on how you tell your story.
That's true. I could be like,
I
I got
kung
it in
fu'd
my
all these
car.
people. They were oppressing me, and I
You could lie.
obviously fought off the band of bandits. Oh, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, but we're talking about like the deeper story. Like, let's
Okay.
get under
Ooh,
the superficial.
gosh.
Let's
That is-
get
that
under
is
the.
vulnerable.
Let's get under
I
that. I
can't
ride a
just-
motorcycle and sometimes I crash. Let's see what's underneath of that for you, Chris.
Okay.
This is going to be fun.
Fair enough.
Also, telling your story can help you process your own
Absolutely.
story, which could then bring healing.
So that is absolutely true. There's actually a field of therapy called narrative therapy, and
Okay.
it focuses on individual stories. And the funny thing is when we tell our story, and we know this as counselors, that when we sit and hear people's stories, we see patterns that come up, right?
Right.
And I think anybody who's a good listener can find that. You
Yeah.
know, what are repeated phrases or attitudes? You know, whether it's, oh, this didn't happen for me or that didn't happen for me, or the repeated phrase or attitude is, then I was able to conquer this, and then I was able to do that.
Yeah.
It all is pertinent to our story because it shows how we identify ourselves. Do we
Right.
identify more with suffering? Do we identify more with like fun and excitement? Do we identify more with other people? Because there's another thing. You can ask someone their story and it can involve everybody else in their life, but really
But then,
stay away from who and what they are.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's good. One of my favorite things about, I don't want to call it storytelling, but telling your story is we used to, at our old church, we had this counseling ministry and we had like groups, and in the groups, everyone had to tell their story.
Yes.
So the leaders would go first, right, to model it. And it was
Right.
literally like 7 to 10 minutes and you told your story.
Ah.
And what I love, my favorite part, and I want to do this again so badly, is as people are telling their stories, you all of a sudden see other people have these breaks of like, I'm not alone. I thought I was the only one who's ever dealt with that. I thought I was the only one
Yes.
who's ever been through that. And so telling your story gives other people permission
Right.
to tell their stories and to not be scared to do so.
So then it becomes so telling our story, right? One benefit is us, and we're kind of like piecing together, like even how God works in our life and our experiences and even hardships and tying those into where we are today. But you know what you're saying is it helps also other people to receive that story,
Yeah.
and then it's another like level of relating.
Right.
So-
Just think about when you're not telling your story I'm not going to say every time. A lot of times it could be because you're sitting in the guilt and shame of it or the embarrassment of it because
Yeah.
you don't think that anybody else has like experienced it.
Right.
Right. And that's obviously where the enemy wants us to stay.
Sure.
And so it is just right. Bring things out into the light and it brings freedom to them. And so same thing with our stories.
And I think even in the telling, when you have willing listeners, right? You're right. The story is a type of confession, bringing it into the light, but also willing listeners and receivers. Especially when it's non-judgmental and it's not like, oh, you shouldn't have done that, shouldn't have done this, because oftentimes people tell their story and they're trying to mask over that shame. I know I shouldn't have done this. I know I shouldn't have done that. So someone saying, oh, well, I don't know if you should have done that, super doesn't help. But to be able to just hear and even be curious about, even like, okay, so tell me more about that. Why did you do that? Or why did this happen? Or what was your experience with that?
Yeah.
Is the role of a willing listener. And I'm telling you, that is a representation of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Because the first time when it mentions him actually doing something, other than being a baby,
Oh, what?
a baby, especially a baby. Sorry, he was drinking espresso. Sorry.
Let's not go back there.
He's after coming out of the library. No, so he was 12 years old and he was sitting in the temple and he's asking questions and listening to the answers. That is what the Word of God says.
Yeah.
Right? He's not scolding and correcting. He's like, okay, help me understand this. Is it this and this and this? And that's I think that's important for us to take that stance because we, the listeners, then have to be present and truly curious and really absorb that. And I think, Caleb, you were talking about that. I don't know. It seems like that's what I gathered from you when you were talking about the value you find in hearing other stories.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this because I like just engaging in like other podcasts in the past couple of years has been so helpful for me in getting to hear different people's stories and getting to understand that like people have different personalities, different backgrounds, different just things they've been through in life that have affected who they are. And so when I see someone who's different from me, that helps me have a better understanding of, oh, they have their own story and God made them in a different way than he made me. And I think it's huge for just building like empathy and understanding. I mean, we had episodes recently on like, why are we so judgmental?
Yeah.
I think it's because we expect people to be and act the same way as we are. But when we're able to hear and be curious and be interested in other people's stories, that helps us to understand how other people work and where they're coming from. And we lean in. Yeah.
To truly understand their experience instead of just superimposing our experience on that.
And I think it just gives such a beautiful picture of like the gamut of all the creativity that God had in making people and the beauty of the different ways that he's brought healing and restoration and people into people's lives that have helped them through really hard times or difficult circumstances.
It almost sounds like this episode right here is, it shouldn't just be the why is it important to tell your story, but why is it important to hear other people's stories?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Because it is.
Absolutely.
And everybody has a story.
That's true. And it's interesting how, there's different layers to that even. Like there's the one layer could be the story I'm comfortable telling. Right? Or the story I'm willing to present.
Yeah.
Right? This, and this versus a story that is like super hard and vulnerable for me to present. Oftentimes people will be comfortable in some roles because there's an aspect of perceived control that they have. But then when they're asked a question or someone approaches them with something they didn't expect, oh boy, that's tough. And they can feel that like embarrassment or heat. And I don't want to call it embarrassment necessarily, but almost that like, oh my gosh, wait a second. This is super vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you will my hope is through even today's episode and then listening to stories is that it encourages people to go out and start telling their story. And you will learn like there's some people who you probably shouldn't tell the deeper story to.
A good point.
Yeah.
Good
and
point.
then there'll be a smaller number of people who can know all those details.
Open that up a little bit.
Well, because all of our stories are going to involve other people.
Yeah.
Right. And some of our stories might have a lot of, let's just take maybe someone who's had to endure abuse.
Yeah.
Right. And they're not going to sit here and necessarily, they might name their abuser and every detail that they did.
Okay. Yeah.
Like that's going to be, it's very vulnerable, but they're not going to do that with just any old platform. But I tell you what, if they're in a group of other abuse survivors, they're going to get more in depth. They're going to be able to open up and feel safer there.
So does that tie in? Because then we run into people who will tell their story to whomever, no matter what. And then I don't know, it almost seems like a different quality. Like they're just... maybe they're craving to be heard, to be understood, to be listened to. And so potentially there's not a lot of discernment in who they tell.
Yeah.
Which opens them up to other, other people who aren't really interested in who they are.
Right.
And maybe they're not even paying attention to the deep story they're telling. They're just telling something to get someone's notice or someone's attention.
And it could be because it could be just part of the trauma of it all. Right.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
then I'd say like, if you notice someone doing that, definitely have them seek some counseling and therapy so that they can work on that. Right. So I think, and something I say in a lot of things in counseling is check your heart, check your motives.
Okay.
Before you're telling your story. Right. And I even do this every time I have told my story is where's my heart? Like I want this to be for the glory of God. What are my motives? Are my motives to throw somebody under the bus? Are my motives to out someone? Or again,
recruit other people to your side.
right?
Yeah.
Or again, are my motives to further the kingdom of God in telling my story? And if those
That's gonna be tough though, because you can truly think, oh, I'm doing this to further the kingdom, but deep down, maybe it's like recruiting people to.
Right. Well, that's why you got to do a
poor
self-check.
Caroline. Not that you're saying, not that I'm not saying that you're going to do
Right.
that, but poor Chris. People go, like, poor Chris. Oh my gosh, he's so.
Right.
I haven't suffered comparatively. So,
But that's why I would say take a moment to check your heart
yeah.
and check your motives. I mean, you could check your motives
But
and
my
then go
heart's
and
always right.
go
What are you
deeper
talking
and check your heart.
But it's
And
always
that's
good.
going to tell you the truth.
I can argue left and right how good I am.
You could, but we get into a session and I'll show you you're wrong. No,
Wow.
just kidding.
So I say that tongue in cheek.
Yes.
So the other thing I thought about is when we were talking about doing this is like which story, because our lives are composed of several stories.
Yeah. Again, I think it's check your audience.
So it doesn't start,
your
well, I was born
It could.
in Newport Beach, California. And that's where it all
I'm starting back in 1977.
When Downey Park was founded.
I know. I love that you got my birth year is printed on all
Oh,
of
it
our
is.
stuff.
It's on all the stuff.
Just
Established in it's Caroline Howard.
I was born and they were
Caroline-
like, we need to get a solid counseling center. This girl's going to need it eventually.
Upcoming. Nice. Yeah, very good. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I think it is what part. And and again, I think that's a check your audience, right? I mean, if I have a bunch of my son's friends around, I'm not going into certain parts of my story.
Sure.
If it's a bunch of my girlfriends,
Okay.
we're just gabbing and we have like 4 hours, we're gonna tell the whole
Right.
darn thing.
Right.
You know.
So the other part of being present with someone's story is, and this is like encouragement to those of you out there who are like, yeah, I do want to tell my story. I want to also like strongly encourage you to draw others out in their story and be present with them as they tell you their story.
Yeah.
Because the tendency is to hear an aspect of someone's story, and if it immediately references something in your brain, and now you're stuck in, that I went through that too, and then you're wanting to like tell that could be more about you,
Right.
Not to say that there's not a place you should, not to say that there isn't a place you should do that, or will never have a place to do that. But in the moment you're hearing someone's story, be present with them and be curious about them.
Yep.
And I, even with couples, I call it the bowl. Between, let's say, between two friends, there is a bowl, and the bowl needs to be filled, and the bowl needs to be emptied, right? And if I'm constantly filling the bowl with my story, then I'm not leaving it empty for your story.
Yeah.
And I'm not asking you questions, so you can help fill the bowl. So picture that, because and this is an examination in all my life and in all of the tens of listeners that we have. I'm just kidding.
Hundreds. It's hundreds.
To consider, like, do I truly hear other people's stories, or am I just always telling my story?
Yeah. That's that whole active listening
Yes.
part, right? We sit and we listen, and then ask some clarifying questions when they're done. And I think we'll be able to kind of model that a little bit as we all share our stories with one another.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're not going to like jump on each other's stories or be like, yeah, Caleb, I did that too.
That reminds me. Woo, dog.
So I think one other thing I want to share is we often think when we tell our stories, it has to wrap up and end in this tiny little package with the pretty little bow.
Oh.
And I hate to tell you this, you ain't getting a bow until you get to heaven.
That's right. Great point.
So, it can end messy. There doesn't have to be this finale. And then I figured it all out because
right. And then
if you
Jesus.
did, can you call me and tell me how you did it? Because I haven't figured that out yet.
So which goes to the point that the story is still unfolding. We are still living our stories.
Yeah. Our stories they're constantly evolving because God's still writing them.
And I have plenty of sub stories that seem to have wrapped up, but who knows?
I mean, yeah, I'm
Golly.
sure. There's
Sure.
sure. There's
Speech class for you, Caroline.
Exactly. I'm sure you haven't seen your last concussion, even though you're thinking that story is all wrapped up.
Oh man, I hope I don't have one too many. Like,
We could be right there on the
today
line.
I have half my brain. Yes, totally.
Yeah. So exciting. So
Cool.
I'm excited. Yeah.
I'll say I think one of my favorite parts of my day job,
Yeah.
I work at a church and I do video and graphic art stuff,
Uh-huh.
is getting to record people's testimonies when they get to share, like, usually very, very vulnerable and deep parts
Wow.
of their life story. And it's often the first time that I'm meeting someone, which, as you said, might not be the best place. Obviously,
Right.
this is different. But it's so beautiful to get to hear someone be so open and honest and vulnerable about times that they've really struggled and that God has brought them through. And I actually just sent off there's a couple that I just recently recorded a testimony for and sent it to them today after I'd kind of done most of the editing process. And they were so grateful for, like, man, I can't believe that you put this together and told our story in such a beautiful way. And they were just so grateful. And I'm like, man, it's so beautiful. And I can't wait for people to get to hear their story too.
That's
Yes.
cool.
And I think that's one thing we talked about is, like, a lot of times in the church, we don't often get to that very deep level either. It's,
Right.
it's all very surface level. There might be one or two people that we go deep with, but we're often kind of like holding back. And we've seen a lot of people in the church be like, well, people are super superficial.
Right.
And
Right, no wonder.
Like, I don't feel like I can really find community here. And so I think telling your story is also just a great way to let others know that they have a space that they can be vulnerable and that it creates kind of this beautiful community of people who are real with one another, who aren't just, like, hiding all of their emotions.
I think that's huge. I think it's huge.
Yeah. It brings us together, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a little confused because I heard you say you did video editing for other people too. I thought you were just wholly consumed with.
He's like, you
I have
don't
to
pay me
kinda
enough to like support
get
me.
over that one. Yeah.
I'll have to say though, because we had already known each other for a few months, and I had the privilege of being asked by the church, your church, to do my testimony,
Uh-huh.
and you recorded it.
Yeah.
And you make it such a comfortable environment,
Ooh.
right?
Nice.
And you ask such great questions.
Oh, so you see, that was my next question.
Yeah.
If you're asking questions
He
and you're
does.
kind of drawing out.
For sure.
Great
Totally.
Oh,
questions.
so you're an expert at this. Nice.
And then his video editing is amazing. This is why you've won awards.
I want to look
a couple
20
of
pounds lighter, and I want it more.
That's not the kind of editing I do, actually.
all right.
Yeah, there's nothing we can do for that.
Give me
Yeah.
a deeper voice, more.
All right. So
Yes.
wrapping up our first summer series. Anything else you want to say about stories?
I think we covered a lot of good ground
Yeah,
about
we did.
not only being present with ourselves in telling our story, but also truly being present with others and hearing their story and how healing that can be.
Yeah.
And how that is part of our faith. And that is, I mean, listen, that's part of Christ that you can give others, even the others who do not know Christ,
Right.
is to be able to say, hey, tell me about yourself. Like,
Yeah.
and yeah, totally. So,
I mean, think
super
about
cool.
it. The Bible is literally people's stories.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
with
for
Christ
sure.
involved in
Yeah,
it.
I love that because that's something I've heard in the past. Like, the Bible, we have a God who loves to reveal himself through stories.
Yeah.
Right? The Bible is just all these stories of who God is and what he's done. And he continues to reveal himself in other people's stories all around us. And I think that's just, like, we often think of stories as kind of this frivolous thing, but it's like, no, our God loves stories and he loves to tell stories.
Yeah,
And he loves to reveal
yeah.
himself in that way.
Very
So
cool.
good, so good.
Good point.
All right. Well, stay tuned
Awesome.
next week. We're going to arm wrestle after this to see who has to go first.
But before you shut that dial off, make sure you leave a review, and actually not just the star review, but write something. Tell us what you think and share it with a friend, and we can get more of those stories out there.
Yep, for sure. Like and subscribe.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us today as we continue our journey talking about life's many questions.
To stay connected with us, you can follow us at Downey Park Counseling on both Facebook and Instagram. You can also follow Caroline on Instagram at Relatable Caroline. And make sure you tune in next week for our next question.